Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to talk about the marriage of the Hitlers, and this is something which took place on 29th of April 1945, very early in the morning. Always nice to get an early start. And this was for Eva Braun. This was her dream come true, and which ladies out there wouldn't want to get married in a underground bunker in a besieged, destroyed city. So as far as Hitler was concerned, though, he wanted it done properly. He didn't want any fake ceremonies. It had to be done as it should be done, and so all credit to Adolf for that one. Now, Walter Wagner was a 37-year-old municipal official. He was a lawyer, and he was known to Goebbels, or somebody within, he'd been suggested by somebody in Goebbels' entourage to him, and Goebbels therefore arranged for him to be around. Now, the thing is, though, Berlin was under siege, and the Soviet army was only a few, by this stage, it was only about 500 meters from where the Hitler was. So he was in combat somewhere, and he had to be got. So what I imagine happened was that sometimes Hitler said, right, I'm going to get married now, passed the message on to Goebbels, and then Goebbels sent out some SS soldiers in one of these armoured vehicles to find him, and it seems as though they were able to actually find him. He was in a Volkssturm unit, and they brought him to the bunker. And the reason he had to do it, because he was the only one then available to them that they knew of who had the legal authority to perform civil marriages. Now, I don't quite know how they'd arranged this, but what I imagine it must have happened is he must have been pretty grubby. Now, I've noticed from my own experience, when you sort of playing soldiers, as they used to do in the army, you do tend to get a bit dirty doing it. So what I imagine happened, that they must have either had some, I don't know if had some spare clothes on or something like that, or but they must have got them to clean up and all the rest of it. I imagine that first, and then Wagner, so clean them up, I imagine, I don't know, and then he has a look at the documentation that they've got and said, but we don't have the official marriage forms. And as Hitler wanted it done properly, they had to find them. So then they have to go out again, because he's the only one that knows what they look like, know where they're kept. They find a local government office, and they retrieve the correct documents before the ceremony could begin. Now, how did they get into the office? I don't know. I don't suppose he had the keys on him. But then again, the SS no doubt had some grenades on them, so they could actually force their way through. So now that they've got the paper, I suppose he had to get cleaned up again, and this might explain why it actually took place when it took place and why it was so delayed. It might do, I don't know, I'm just guessing. The marriage law was defined in 1938, and added to this there were wartime emergency regulations, and they had to actually do them. Now, the war marriage regulations allowed them to bypass the usual public waiting periods. So normally what you'd do is you'd say that, look, on this date there's going to be a wedding, and I don't know what it was then. I think it was 2 weeks, I imagine. But anyway, they obviously couldn't wait 2 weeks. I mean, they could have asked the Soviets, who wouldn't mind tacking 2 weeks later, but they didn't think of that one. So under Nazi law, the couple had to legally declare that they were of pure Aryan descent and free from any hereditary diseases. Now, I think that Hitler didn't tell the truth on this one, because there was example of hereditary diseases in his family, and anyway, I've talked about that in other videos. I'll give you a link if I remember. So the question: do you, mein Führer, Adolf Hitler, take Miss Eva Braun as your wife? And both answered yes, and vice versa, I do. And so that was it, really. Now, they had to have witnesses as well. So witnesses were Joseph Goebbels, propaganda minister, and Martin Bormann, Hitler's private secretary. So they were the official witnesses to this marriage. Now, and when Eva came to write her name down, she wrote Eva B, then she realised she'd made a mistake. She was no longer Eva B, she was now Eva H. So she wrote Eva Hitler, née Braun. So this document was signed just after midnight, 29th of April. And so, 24 plus 13, 38 hours later, they were less than 38 hours of wedded bliss, and then they decided to commit suicide. Now, why did they get married at all? Well, Hitler wrote his private will that the marriage was a reward for her loyal friendship and her choice to stay in the city to die with him. By becoming his wife, she gained the legal right to be cremated with him and acknowledged in his will. That's quite odd, that, isn't it? Really, so you have to be married to someone to be cremated with them. You couldn't just say you wanted it. Now, what happened to the registrar? Well, Walter, he left the bunker immediately. He wasn't allowed to stay for the drink ceremony, which they laid on afterwards in a bit of the party. He was needed, every man was needed, returned to his fighting unit, and whilst Hitler and Eva were still alive, he died before them. He was killed in action that very day. So, anyway, now Hitler, though, he didn't really want to hang around for the drink, so he went off to dictate his private will and testament to his secretary, Traudl Junge, who really described it in detail after in various interviews, including on the World at War, which is constantly on the television here in the United Kingdom. So the document's quite short, quite cold, and explains why he chose to marry Eva. And what he wrote was, although I believed during the years of struggle that I couldn't undertake the responsibility of marriage, now before the end of my life's path, I have decided to take as my wife the woman who, after many years of true friendship, came of her own free will to this city, already almost besieged, to share my fate. At her own desire, she goes to death with me as my wife. This will compensate us for what we both lost through my work in the service of my people. And so, therefore, okay, what can we say about this text? Well, it's a marriage of sacrifice, isn't it, really? Hitler frames the marriage, so it's not an act of love, but is a reward for true friendship. And her choice to stay in Berlin, so he treats it a bit like he's pinning a medal on her. So that's thanks very much for your loyalty. There you go, there's your medal, we'll get married. The justification of why he stayed single for so long, this was the years of struggle. He wanted the public to believe that he was exclusively committed to Germany. Marriage was now allowed because his life path was over. So the secret no longer mattered. Now, the property and assets, so he had stolen quite a lot. Oh, he had some, sorry, I don't think that's not entirely fair. He had actually earned some of it through writing Mein Kampf. Because of his state, the way it worked, he made him a millionaire because of the sales were more or less obligatory by state-owned concerns. So, I think that's fair to say the taxpayer had funded his lifestyle, so I think it's fair to say he sort of stole it. So he leaves his collection. He left his collection of paintings and his possessions to the state. So he's given them back to when he got it for, but he specifies that his relatives and faithful co-workers, like his secretaries, should be given enough to maintain a modest, simple life, and he also wants Eva's family to be supported. That's quite nice, really, considering that Eva's father certainly didn't like him. I mean, I can understand why, of course. I mean, none of us would want our daughters to end up with somebody who's never done an honest day's work in their life. Eva's father, in fact, was only 4 years older than Adolf himself. Now, one thing about Hitler, there's no regrets. There's no apology in the document for the war he caused or for the millions of deaths. The only thing he says is his own personal service, and frames his and Eva's deaths as a sacrifice, not as what it really was, which was a cowardly way out. This was the only way out, which was easy for him. It was undoubtedly the coward's way out, because faced with all the other possibilities that could happen, he took the easiest one, the same as Himmler. It was the coward's way out. He committed suicide because he tried to push it as long as he could, and then he really couldn't push it any further. Right, so it's also worth noting that Hitler dictated the second document at the same time. This was his political testament, and Eva doesn't even get a mention in this one. I suppose it's understandable. Instead, of course, he does blame the Jews for the war. He fired his top generals. This was his way of getting revenge on Himmler and Goering for treason, and he appoints a new government. So this shows that Hitler, of course, his compartmentalization that he mentioned earlier, he kept his private life separate. That goes in one box, and his public life goes in another box. And the hatred and the war and this all goes into that box. And to be quite honest, I think actually Hitler didn't, from this point of view, that Hitler didn't show his hate in his private box. I can't really think of examples, actually. Probably plenty of them. Just can't think of any as I sit here now. It just occurred to me. Because most haters are unable to separate the two. Anyway, that apart. So what, 38 hours marriage, legal perfect wedding, isn't it, really? And in the eyes of the law, Eva Braun died as his wife. Thanks very much for listening. Hope you found it interesting. I upload every day at 2000 hours. I upload longer videos on Tuesdays and Fridays, and other days it's short videos. I also have channel membership. Channel membership gives you access to over 800 videos, so that is necessary because of YouTube's policies. Unfortunately, I have all sorts of problems with YouTube, AI slop, videos being taken down for no reason, false copyright claims. I am utterly sick of the whole thing. Anyway, with YouTube, so I'm hoping something else is going to come along. But at least a membership that it isn't hit by the same ways as it is if the videos are publicly available. So thanks for being here, and bye for now. And I'll give you some links in the description.